Hi and welcome, Philip.
Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening. A pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
I immediately fell in love with the title of your new record. And I have to ask you that. What's the story behind the title and how popular are weather houses in the UK?
Not a general item in most people's houses, has to be said. But the idea for calling the album Weather House came from when I was talking with the artist who did all the artwork, Ted Dewan, and he really just focused in on this image in one of the songs called It Will End in Tears. And he really liked that whole thing of a weather house. And so he went off to a junkyard and found all the little pieces to make the sculpture that's on the front. So
you specially built that?
Absolutely.
Wow,
yes,
that's amazing.
I've got the little figures now back at home with me, all cuddled up next to each other.
That's beautiful. So by now you own a weather house yourself.
Yeah, half a weather house, yeah.
So reviews say that this second album of yours sounds different than the debut. No surprise. And its arrangements are closer to the ones of Radiohead. And I was wondering, do you agree on that?
Well, I think there's, one of the big differences between Weather House and the first one, Familial, I think for me was the starting point of having the drums as being one of the first things that was recorded. Okay. And because I didn't drum on my first record.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, in that respect, I'd say, that's probably, for anybody listening to me, that's probably a recognisable Radiohead element. But the record itself is very much a result of the kind of the musical personalities who made it. So it's myself, Adam Ilhan, and Quinta, and it's just the three of us locking ourselves away in a studio for about 6 months, and the sound of a record is very much a result of that.
Yeah, I understand. So from what I read, you absolutely wanted the debut to sound different from Radiohead. And this time for your second solo album, you did not want to avoid that. I read you said that like this in an interview. So what changed your mind in between the two solo records, or how would you describe is your thinking about that in general by now?
Well, with the first one, I had it in mind that I was doing it outside of Radiohead, and just felt that actually if I was doing it in that context, then it should be something completely different. Trying to establish myself as a songwriter in my own right. So, yes, it just felt appropriate that it kind of went down the route of how the songs were written, which was very much based around an acoustic guitar, and then finding a singing voice around that. So, but coming to Weather House, I think I got that out of my system on Familial, and it's just a big part of what I do, Radiohead. So, if those elements were there and seemed appropriate, I didn't think of them as Radiohead elements, but, it's just something that's part of what I do musically. And so they're there. I didn't want to just, reject them out of hand this time.
Okay, I understand. People could think that every music works in, very easily said, every kind of venue, but you discovered it differently while you were touring with your first solo record, or at least I read so. Yeah. So that made you decide some changes for the new album. Could you explain what you discovered, why some music does not work in special venues you played in?
Well, I found with the first record, it worked really well in very intimate venues. It's a very delicate record, very acoustic record. But actually translating that to live had its difficulties at points. So I found that actually playing that music, places like festivals, it was tricky.
Okay.
But actually in the right venue, it was a real joy to play it. I suppose that whole process of playing the material live and having to perform it, that kind of started to change the way that I was singing. Mm-hmm. So that fed into Weather House,
Okay, I see. I just wanted to get a bit into the ways of how this happened. Yeah. So yeah, you gave me a good idea about it. So just sharing that story about that, you wrote the lyrics for that, or you came up with the idea in Berlin. And I'm really glad to hear that you do have some holidays, because I read that you started working on this album right after you finished touring with Radiohead. So, which means, or I thought, this man does not need to have some rest and really calm down to get inspired. Would you agree on that? Or do you have to have some times off, and the inspiration for the record you had, like, I don't know, during touring or whenever you had a quiet moment in between?
Yeah, I like time off, actually.
Good to hear that.
I suppose, actually, working on Weatherhouse as well, I was able to be at home for that whole period. You know, I was working in the Radiohead studio. It's just not far away from where I live. And so kind of making a record in itself, it felt like a bit of a holiday, really.
Wow.
So it was lovely. It was a great experience doing it.
You did a good choice in choosing your job then.
Yeah, no complaints there.
So you changed the lineup, so to say, from record 1 to record 2. So is that a momentary decision, and could it be different for a third solo album, or how stable is this combination you're playing in?
Well, the people that I made Weatherhouse with, Ardim, Ilhan and Quinta, they were part of the live band for Familial. So it felt very natural to then go on and make this record with them. It's been a very fruitful musical relationship as well. I mean, we've done a commission for Romver Dance Company in London, that kind of thing. So it feels there's a lot of musical mileage to cover still with Ardim and Quinta.
Okay, I see. So you're only playing 2 shows this time, which is a shame. So is there more to come in 2015?
Oh, invite me back. I'll be back.
Okay, I do. So you're officially re-invited. We're checking a date. Thank you so much, Philip Selway.
Thank you very much.
It was an enormous pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, shucks. Likewise.